Welcome to the Travel Not to Escape podcast. Hi, navigators. Today we have a very special episode because I'm interviewing the panelists for the Nomad Summit, where we're diving into mental health and entrepreneurship. So today I have one of the panelists on. His name is Mike Michelini, and he's the founder and host of Global from Asia, a platform dedicated to helping businesses with cross-border e-commerce and global trade. He does a lot of things. So he also organizes Cross-Border Summit and Cross-Border Matchmaker, essentially events that are designed to serve as learning hubs for global business owners to enhance their cross-border operations. And more recently, his new venture is Hamza, a crypto startup for e-commerce on blockchain. So thank you so much, Mike, for taking the time to being on today.
My pleasure, Jillian. It's really great to be here. I'm excited to talk with you.
Yes, me too. And I want to know, we started already talking about this before we hit record, but the early stage of entrepreneurship is something that I'm currently in, and I know a lot of people that will be at Nomad Summit who are still in that building phase or even just the idea phase, right? A lot of people, myself included, coming from these corporate backgrounds, and in the US especially, I know that's where you're from as well. And we have this more traditional success pathway of go get the degree, go get a STEM-based degree, right? And then you'll be set, and that will be your life's mission and work, and then you'll have the family, and that's all you need, and then you'll retire and die. But, a lot of entrepreneurs realize that that's not necessarily the case. And so walk me through your path. I know that you kind of had that beginning, early stage beginning, and what was that spark that led you into entrepreneurship? Was it one spark? Was it multiple? What finally made you take that leap?
Sure. I love the question. I don't want to geek out on Matrix, but I think you're talking about. I feel like that's like the Matrix, what they tell you to.
Yeah.
And we have to break out, and we all have our own story. To answer the last part about when, I remember I grew up Baptist, and then I switched to Catholic. My mom was, I don't want to get too religious, but my mom was Catholic. My dad was Baptist, and I was in a Baptist church on a Sunday morning, and I saw a magazine on a coffee table or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was basically about startups, incubators, Silicon Valley. I grew up in Connecticut, U.S., Hartford, and I was so intrigued. I was like, wow, you can do these little mini companies from an idea and build it up. It was like in my mind. I don't know. I must have been before my teens, because I switched religions, I remember, before I was in my teens. It must have been like 10, 11. But I just felt like, I don't know if it was from that magazine. I didn't really read the whole thing. Probably it was in church. But I remember thinking, or maybe I don't know if it was my parents or people around me that are like, oh, but to do your own business, you need to go to like college. And then you need to get like work experience. And then you got to get an MBA. And then you can start your own business. So I remember, my mom might even keep it, but I remember I had a timeline. I remember this timeline in school where there was activity where you drew like construction paper and you put your milestones of your future life. And I put like college, good job, like, good technical job, MBA, start my own business. And that was like in my brain. Like I got into, went through high school and then got into an engineering school, Stevens Tech in Jersey. The reason I picked that one was because I actually wanted to do business. I didn't want to do engineering, but my dad was an engineer, and I went to a Catholic high school, small Catholic high school with nuns. It was some private teachers, but like I don't know what percentage, but it was over half that were actually the sisters of the I don't know the correct terms anymore, but they were very kind. But the guidance counselor was a nun.
Wow.
Sister Joan, I believe the name. But I remember kind of having these little, not like so intense, but kind of like battles with her about my career. She's like, no, you need to get an engineering degree. And I mostly told all my guidance counselors, my friends, I want to do my own business. And I remember even having an argument with Sister, forget Christine maybe, about chemistry. I didn't want to memorize the periodic table of elements. Their whole semester was memorizing the rows and the columns and getting quizzed at the end of each week on whatever row or column we were on about the atomic number, atomic weight, all this. I'm like, I was always the one that like battled with her, not because I couldn't do it. Did good in school, but I didn't want to use my time to
It's like,
memorize.
why are we doing this? Yeah.
Yeah. So her and I battled the whole semester, but I kind of went along with my parents because my parents didn't have college degrees, and my dad had 2 year technical associates. And he worked in the state of Connecticut in a road construction engineering surveying. So he really wanted me to go to engineering school. And, I felt like I was like, I guess it's the right way. You go to the technical, because they all say don't get a business degree, get an engineering degree. If you want a business degree, get an MBA. And then your undergraduate's technical, and then your like postgraduate's like business or management.
So a whole path laid out.
Yeah, that's the path, right? So, back to chemistry, I constantly got called after a class to talk to her about my resistance to memorize the periodic table of elements because I wasn't doing good. I was getting a C or D because I didn't want to memorize it. I really didn't want to memorize it. She's like, what are you going to do when you grow up? I'm like, I'm going to start my own business. And she's like, and you don't think you need chemistry for that? I'm like, I don't think so. And she's like, you know what? You're going to be in your company office when you're grown up, and maybe you or somebody around you is going to spill a chemical on the table, maybe in the kitchen, and it's going to combine with another chemical and it's going to spark a fire. And because you don't know your periodic table of elements, you're going to take another chemical from under the cabinet and make a huge fire and burn your whole business down. Something, maybe I'm not, it's something like this. Basically, she says I was going to mix chemicals and cause a chemical reaction in my business because I didn't
Physically burn it all down.
I was going to burn my company down because I didn't memorize her, her periodic table of elements. So, it was like this. I was kind of, when I was in student government, every year, all 4 years in high school, I was elected president of my class. And, I did good in my grades. And, but I was always kind of like confrontational, like the guidance counselor, the dean. And he's like, Mike, you're very smart and hardworking, but why do you question everything so many things that we say? I'm the teacher. You shouldn't question me. I remember him saying this in front of the whole class because I would question him because I didn't want to just learn stuff just to learn stuff. I would say why, or I would question it. He didn't like that. So I was always like this. But, I went to the college, still went the normal track, kind of going along with family and the teachers to get the technical degree because it's good to get a technical degree. And then did the internships. Fraternity was really smart. I actually didn't think I was going to do a fraternity. I thought fraternity was like, of course, there are the parties and the hazing there is or was. I did go through that, but I still think there was a lot of leadership and out of the box thinking I got my fraternity. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad I did that. I mean, I know some have maybe bad experiences, but I thought it was good. And I also got into their networks. I got great apprentice jobs from my fraternity network. But basically, I went to Wall Street, and I was one of the few that got to Wall Street from engineering because they want you to stay in the back office of the bank, not in the front office. But I didn't want to work in the back office coding. So in one of my apprenticeships in 1999, in the .com bubble, I was a freshman, and I was with, I don't want to be so horrible, but I was in all the geeky programmers in the corner, area department. And there was this cool guy that would come in and go back and forth talking to like my manager with a clipboard or whatever and then leaving. And I was like, hey man, what do you do? He's like, oh, I'm like the dude between the business and the technical. And I was like, I want to do that, and I kind of somewhat started to do that. And I got into middle office. But even in my job at Deutsche Bank, I picked Deutsche Bank over Goldman Sachs. But basically, I was talking to all these banks. The reason I picked Deutsche Bank was they let me work in middle office, not back office. I didn't want to work in the technical department. And the hiring guy in Wall Street says, I'm not the hiring manager or decision maker for that department. If I hire for the technical department, if I cannot have any control over you getting a job in any other department. I said, I know, but I don't want to work in this department. And then the HR women were very nice because I interned there. And they're like, why'd you do that? Why'd you say that to him? He's not going to be able to hire you if you don't want to work in that department. But they actually called me back and they let me interview for middle office. So I was one of the few at Stevens Tech that went to middle office. And I ended up working on the trading floor in 60 Wall. at Deutsche Bank. But I still wasn't happy. Even basically the journey was on my first day of orientation at Deutsche Bank, the guy sitting next to me, Greg, already took his senior design project from University of Michigan and made it into a mobile app on a app platform. So he was a developer. And he saw in me as a marketer. He's like, hey, I need help with marketing. On nights and weekends, I started helping him with his app in like 2003. And I started learning about kind of growth hacking and things like that. Like this was before iOS and Android. This was like Java, J2ME apps. And I was kind of like growth hacking by learning how to get on the top of these marketplaces through, I guess I'm a little bit technical, but I would find these hacks of like emailing our users. I got the email list and I would figure out how to email them before like email newsletters were popular, and telling them to download it for free, but download it off the marketplace, not off the file we email you. You have to, so when they downloaded it off the marketplace, it showed lots of downloads and it pushed us higher as a higher downloaded app, even though we gave it to them for free, and it got us more sales. But he was pretty impressed. And I was like, yeah, this is cool. Like I'm doing marketing, but with tech and with, maybe I was fearful. I didn't know how to do my own business. His dad was an entrepreneur from Michigan. I remember being in a New York City diner with him, like, 6 months in, talking about the app. And I was like, hey, Greg, I want to be a partner in here. I mean, I appreciate you, letting me learn this and I was getting some cash from him, but I want to be a partner. It got a little emotional, honestly, like, on my side. And he's like, oh, Mike, my dad says don't take partners. It's always difficult or tricky with, partners and friends. So he uses, I don't know if it was a reason or excuse, but he says he didn't have other partners. He was 100% owner. He basically said his dad wouldn't let him, or I don't know exactly.
Copped out, yeah.
So I don't know. That was maybe his first 6 months out of college or a year. And so I just stopped. I just said, I'm not going to keep doing this because I don't need, we're getting paid a lot at Wall Street. It's not like I needed extra cash from working there. I wanted to do my own business. So I found like a banner ad on my Yahoo Mail. I remember it still. And it's like free lunch to learn how to start your own online store, something like that. And my roommate, my friend from my hometown, was sitting with me. He was my roommate. I was like, hey, Andrew, you want to get some free lunch to learn about marketing? And he was not involved in any of my current business. He had his job, I had my job, but he went with me and we signed up for it. I was like, I'm not going to get scammed. I'm not going to sign up for whatever. I know they're going to sell me something. I'm not going to sign up. I'm not going to sign up. I went in there and we were so adamant about not signing up. We left and we're walking down the street on Midtown. Like it was at the Holiday Inn in 34th Street in Manhattan. And we're walking down to like 28th Street and like whatever avenue on the east side. And we're like, yeah, we didn't pay and we got the free lunch. Haha. And I'm like, you know what, Andrew, but what if we just did this? We know, because it was like one of those like packages. You got the shopping cart, you got the payment gateway, you got their CDs. This is 2004. You got the CDs about their training, about how to do ads, how to set up your store. And I was like, yeah, Andrew, I know it. Because they had this payment plan. It was like $3,000 or $4,000, but you could pay on installments of like $300 a month for a couple of years, something like this. So I was like, Andrew, I know we could probably save money figuring it out ourselves, but we're probably not going to do it because we're so busy. So why don't we just make a deal right here and start this right now? 50-50. You do the operations and I'll learn the technical and the marketing, and you can help with like the product and sourcing and logistics and the operations, and we'll split the customer service. And we just shake hands and go back. And they were shocked because they were heavy sales, right? They're like the back of the room salespeople at a hotel, right? Like pushing people. And they were cleaning up the tables and folding the chairs, and they see us walk back. Oh, can we still sign up? And because we had escaped their sales pitch.
Yeah, they thought you were out of the funnel already. We
probably got away. Well, we went and signed up. And it was a drop shipping platform. It's actually bankrupt now. It doesn't matter. I mean, a lot of people sued them and thought they were horrible. I used the tools. I went through their course, and I appreciate what they did. I mean, a lot of people sued them and said they were horrible scammers, but I did the work. I think a lot of times with courses and programs, people blame the program Of course, there's bad courses and programs, but I think the majority of the time people don't do the work. We did the work. School of Hard Knocks, figuring out what products to drop ship, eBay, Alibaba, China, Skype in the middle of the night, sourcing, all while I was working on Wall Street, 12, 13, 14 hours a day on Wall Street, and then at nights and weekends doing that. Maybe take, maybe you can, so that was kind of like, it was 3 or 4 years of that.
And this was 20 years ago too, when there weren't that many resources available online. Like it was, but not in the way that is so readily available now.
I mean, the funniest story was at that lunch, there was a good speaker, and he's like, it's not too late to start selling online. And even I thought it was too late in 2004. Wow. I thought it was too late in 2004. And everybody there thought it was too late. They're like, the dot-com bubble burst, there's already eBay, there's already websites everywhere. Man, even I thought I was late in 2004. But yeah, there was nothing really. I mean, it was so hard to make, like a basic website. I had these page builders, and you'd have to like process it, and then it would bulk upload to a server. It was like, it was very rough. And so many School of Hard Knocks I could go on, but I had nobody.
Was that first business selling bar supplies?
Yeah, so it was the bar supplies. The New York Bar Store, it's still selling now. New York Bar Store registered a domain because we were in New York and we thought it was cool, and we also like bars, and we found the supplies. We were selling all kinds of like men's gift products, like poker stuff and some, the bar supplies and various things under different eBay usernames and websites. We had a few different websites, but the one that really did well was the niche of bar supplies. So we dropped all the other suppliers and went all in on the bar supplies. Yeah, 2004, 2005 and then we started scaling it up.
And at the same time, you were still working on Wall Street?
Yeah. Yeah, it was insane. Not much sleep, I guess, I was always thinking of stuff, and I stick it on a wall. No. Shared a laptop with my roommate because he didn't have a computer yet, so we were like sharing a laptop. And I was watching CDs on a PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2 as a DVD player to watch the PPC trainings about ads But yeah, I mean, it was an amazing time. I wish I did even more, but even back then, I remember I was selling with no company, just signed up and started selling, right? And then I heard about SCORE. I don't know if you ever heard of SCORE.org, I think it's score.org. It's Society of something Retired Executives. It's the RE. So it's these retired business people it's a beautiful organization. They didn't charge me anything, but you can get an appointment, or at least in this time, could get an appointment with them. So I went in New York City, I think near City Hall, in New York's Water Street or whatever, like down there. And I set an appointment, and I met with this really kind old businessman that was just donating his time to consult people like me. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I feel like he gave me wrong advice. I appreciate this person. He's probably passed away now, right? So many years. So, I appreciate him, but he's basically saying to me, you don't have a company and you're doing business, you're going to get sued. You're going to go to, you're going to have all these problems. He's like, you need to set up a company right now. Go to City Hall, cross the street downstairs into the basement, and take a form and fill out a company registration. And I mean, he had a point. And then so I called my roommate, my friend, and I was like, hey, this guy's really freaking out saying we need to set up a company. I went down to City Hall, set up a company. It was a bad mistake because why would I open, we're online business, right? It's eBay. Why would I open and register a company in New York City, New York State, U.S. government, like had taxes at state, and federal. But basically it was just like a ping pong ball because I was talking to somebody else and he would tell me something else, talking to somebody else, and then my parents didn't know, nobody knew. So it was like this over and over for years, basically.
And at what point did you leave Wall Street? Was this the business that allowed you the freedom to leave the corporate job, or was this something just as a step towards the next business?
So I don't know if it's going to be funny or not, but I'll add a little extra story. So that we had a few stores, and New York Bar Store was kind of the one I talk about, but we had a few others that we didn't end up keeping. But I also was doing nightclub promotions at night. So our idea and the site was called Pimp Guide, PIMP, Pimp Guide. And originally, before we started New York Bar Store, it was Pimp Guide because it was like all kinds of bachelor products. And we got a guest list. So our guest list was called Pimp Guide. And I can't believe I could still do this, but I worked Wall Street 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And I would do nightclub promotions on weekdays and weekends. And I made an e-commerce website. But we thought it'd be cool to have like a guest list and a product line or a product store. But that was crazy. I mean, I almost dropped out. I don't know how many hours because I was like a Wednesday night and it's like 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm in this huge nightclub in Times Square and I'm like, I gotta go to Wall Street in like 4 hours, 5 hours. People throwing up around me. Like I didn't even really drink that. It's not I drank, but I wasn't drinking all the time. But I dropped that, and I didn't make that much money. It did make money though because I got paid commission for various the bottles or for guest lists and bringing in people. But the bar supplies was made the money. We actually stopped drop shipping because I don't know. I have mixed feelings about telling people about drop shipping. And I know a lot of probably people that maybe listening or new sellers do that. But I couldn't get unique products. I want to get unique. Mm-hmm. So I started buying from wholesale suppliers. But basically, it filled up my apartment and I wasn't there because I wasn't there. So I always get those UPS store stickers on my door saying we came and you weren't there. It came, so I had to go pick it up So we were having scaling problems. So my old fraternity house in New Jersey, I started asking them, and I got one of my fraternity brothers in. But basically, yeah, it was scaling up, and it was enough. It was not enough to live in New York City, but I was taking home a couple of K a month, each of us. And but maybe back to my friend Greg at the beginning, I kind of understood why I didn't want partners because it was enough maybe for us to kind of quit our jobs. I started with one of my friends. Like I just said, I brought in some of my fraternity brothers and started bringing in partners, and they had different ideas. I wanted to do full time. Mm-hmm. What I learned about them is they were like, oh, I just like the extra pocket money. I want to just take money out of the business and just go have a good Saturday night, or buy some extra nice jackets or sneakers, but I didn't want to take money out of the business. I wanted to grow it. So that was a big battle we had towards the end of my leaving New York because I wanted to quit the job. So in 2007, it was when I started, maybe even late 2006, because it was early 2007. I started pitching them like, hey, I want to take this business to the next level. I want to quit the job on my job. You guys, I don't want, you have your lives, so I don't want you guys to quit your jobs, but I want to go all in on this. But yeah, we got to like double down. It wasn't just about my salary, but it was more about growing. So the short story is I started a second business. I guess it's where I starting all these businesses. But it's a really funny story, but I use MySpace a lot. I don't even think Facebook, or maybe Facebook was just for college students. I didn't get Facebook.
I think early 07, 08, yeah, it was just starting.
So I was on MySpace. And, people it was a little weird, but I could network on there. And I started helping people buy from China as a service. So I was because my partners didn't let me, so I kind of kept the e-com business as more like a side business, and it became my customer of my sourcing. And then I had a lot of people I met in the industry of bar supplies to also help them source. So I started a sourcing service company while I kept my bar supplies e-commerce business. And then I quit my job in March 2007. I put a notice in, and I skipped over all the mental challenges I had working on Wall Street. It's kind of like The Wolf of Wall Street a little bit, not as crazy as that movie, but it was still.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is it true to form?
I think it keeps on cleaning up or, being more and more normal. But I worked there 2003 to 2007, and it was like not as crazy as that movie, but it was like shaving heads on the floor, chicken nugget eating competitions, a lot, of course, swearing all the time, name calling, shouting, and they always try to toughen you up. It's like kind of like fraternity, but they would try to toughen you up, and I still feel like I'm kind of a little bit of a softer person, like I'm still a little bit of the easy person in the negotiations, I believe. So they were always trying to make me tougher. And there was a couple stories. I don't know if you want to go into them, but they were basically always trying to toughen me up, which I didn't really like.
Yeah. So you finally took the leap in March of 2007. and maybe starting to get some traction in a couple of online businesses at that point, and then you went to China?
So there's a little bit of a gap, but I went to San Diego for 4 months.
Mm,
So yeah, I was buying from China and I was helping others buy from China. But the quick story was my friend left Connecticut and moved to San Diego, Peter. And he's like, I went to visit him just for a weekend, like and maybe in '06. And he's like, hey, Mike, my roommate left. I got a room available on the beach, it's Ocean Beach. Well, not on the beach, but
nice.
4 blocks from the beach, Ocean Beach, $400 a month, no contract. Just give me a month's notice. I think it's a good chance for you because he knew I wasn't maybe happy or I wanted to make. So I was like,
Big
this seems like a
change.
good
Yeah.
little gap for me. So I went to San Diego and then, yeah, led to China. But basically, there was a little bit of a gap of San Diego. And then I went to China in October '07 to go to the Canton Fair, which most sellers maybe are familiar with. It's kind of like one of the biggest trade shows in China for factories. And so I had wanted to go to China anyway. And I usually tell people it is a good time to go to these trade shows. So I went to the trade shows in October. Actually, I think technically late September '07 for a month. I was like a 4 week. I extended an extra week, 5 weeks total, and then I was like, this is too much. I don't know. I loved the craziness. I like New York City too because it's kind of crazy. But man, China was like way crazier, like way crazier. Like I like that chaos,
Mm.
and there was just so much overwhelming amount of stuff to learn, to do, business, and so I can't say I didn't go back to the U.S., but I went back for Christmas, like November, mid-November. Went back to Florida. My parents were retired Florida, and I said, "Hey, Mom, Dad, I love you guys." And they're already kind of shocked I quit my job. I was making over 100 grand a year at like 24, 25, right? So, they were. My mom was a bus driver. My dad worked, in road construction. So they were like really trying to encourage me to keep my job, but I'd already quit the
Yeah.
job, right? So they were like already kind of softened up. It's hard, and but yeah, I went back at the very end of '07 to spend 6 more months in China. I didn't say I would move there, but I was like, let me just do 6 months, get an apartment. Even if I lose my contract or my deposit, I'll just try it out. So I moved there in '07.
And during this time period, are you completely alone in building your business? I know the side initial business was with some of your friends, but in building this new venture, post quitting your job, you mentioned your family wasn't filled with entrepreneurs. Did you have a support system or network getting you through these first few years, or was it just you
Man,
and China figuring it out?
I always tried to network. I mentioned earlier, I was a student council president in college. I did the parties. I would organize the dances, student dances. I think it's one of the main jobs I remember as a student government person in high school and college. And I was always a networker. But yeah, I mean, in New York, I didn't know any. And in '03, '04, I didn't know anything. But when I got to San Diego, I've heard about I forgot the name of the organization, but it was some kind of nonprofit, government funded, I feel. And I went to some of those meetups. I'm still in contact with one of the people I met there. I still talk to him. He's in San Diego still, Ben. But most of them, even him, he still hasn't left his job. Still, it's just Ben.
Wow.
He's still,
It's like decades later.
yeah, he's expecting a baby. And yeah, he's in the corporate, he's just in that space. I even tried to encourage him to help now. But anyway, one of them gave me the 4-hour work week in that
Yeah.
group because I was the only one full time. I mean, I wasn't rich. I think like I said, 1,000 or 2,000 a month from the site, the e-commerce, the bar products. Sourcing was up and down. It wasn't like a steady income because I was doing trades, project kind of based, and so that would sometimes pay okay. And but luckily my costs were low, which I really recommend.
Hmm.
I'm the kind of person that says keep your costs low.
Yeah.
I know the other side of the argument, but basically they were all like a lot of those people I met at those meetups. It was like once a month. Were kind of like envious of me or asking me, so they were kind of encouraging me, and they were trying to do it themselves, but they didn't want to. They were like, "How do you quit and not get that
Hmm.
direct deposit every 2 weeks into your
It's
bank account?"
hard. Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, it was hard. I remember it kind of took like, it was a delay because it was March 2007 when I was in San Diego. And I remember it came for like another couple weeks, like another month, because I think the salaries are a little bit delayed, maybe. I just remember it being a
Hmm.
little bit like coming after I left. And yeah, I mean, it's hard, but they gave me the 4 Hour Work Week, Tim Ferriss. I was like, when it had just come out, somebody says, oh, this book just came out and I think it's for you. And he gave it to
Well,
me. I think his name was Matt. There was like 3 or 4 friends I met in that like entrepreneur group, but they were all kind of like trying on the side, but I feel like they weren't even really trying. They tried on the side, but I feel like maybe they had a website. A lot of them were trying to do like sourcing, like I was, like helping factory sourcing and product development. A few of them were doing I forgot the term, but Mexico to the US trade.
mm,
And because it was in San Diego. But I was networking with some of the older business people there. They were like much more established full-time business owners, like, and they were guiding me, and they seemed to believe in me and saw like my um drive. But yeah, that was just like a little bit of a gap, like 3 4 months. Like it was like March or April until like August, September, something like that. But it was an interesting time. But it was lonely. I remember being so lonely. Another story about the San Diego gap. My friend Peter, my roommate, he worked, I forgot exactly what he did, but some kind of like engineering support, technical support. So he was there, he left like 7 a.m., came back at like 7 p.m., something like that. So we'd have the weekends or maybe nights to hang out. But I was so lonely. I walked around the beach, but there was nobody. Starbucks was
everyone's
empty.
working.
Everybody was working in normal offices. And I like mom and pops over Starbucks. So I sat in the desk. No, I call it desk. I sat in almost the same spot at the coffee shop. It was like a husband and wife operations, older couple. And they're like, Mike, we should just put your name tag here. Because I even had the VoIP phone, like one of those actual
The
phones
plug-in.
that plugs into my computer through like Ethernet.
Was
Because
it Ethernet? Yeah.
I was making calls a lot. I don't know really why. I was like sourcing or I had inbound calls. But yeah, I was really lonely. I think I was so bored in San Diego. I don't know. I was actually thinking about Silicon Valley. People are talking about Silicon Valley, but I remember, I think I even have a blog. I have my personal blog, mikesblog.com, and I keep the archives even back then. But back then it was more like a journal where I just and typed, and I was like Silicon Valley or China. It was one of my topics in like summer '07 when I was in San Diego. I'm like, yeah, San Diego seems so boring. It's really beautiful. It's really beautiful. I'm on the beach, my feet are in the sand, but I was so bored. There's bonfires
Totally
and
understand.
yeah,
I went to school at UCSD and I
nice.
lived in San Diego for 10 years. So I 100% understand what you're talking about, especially in OB. I lived in PB.
But yeah, I walked to PB. I love the Ramiro's, the California burritos,
Yes, exactly. The carne asada fries.
carne asada, yeah, with the French fries. Oh, that's so good.
Yeah. I miss those. But I understand where you're coming from because San Diego, as beautiful as it is, and I think that this is very common even in the digital nomading life, where you are in a beautiful destination. There's beach there, there's whatever you want there, but it doesn't necessarily attract a lot of entrepreneurs with drive that are hungry. And that's really what you need in the early stages. I feel like other people that are also in that hustle and grind, and then forcing you to also keep going, normalizing also the fact that you might be working extra hours or working at a coffee shops with the phone calls going. So I 100% agree. Like San Diego is a great place to visit and even live maybe later years or maybe early years where you're students. But in that really pivotal moment where it sounds like you were, just wasn't
Yeah.
the right fit.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I would, yeah, it's a little bit, I don't want to pick on San Diego. It's beautiful, but I mean, I think any of these, like you said, any of these beautiful places, but they don't have the community or like kind of like losing steam. Like, remember walking around, yeah, it would get boring and you get demotivated. I've
Hmm.
solved that now, which I believe I've solved it now. But back then, it kind of like slow me down and make me feel like lazier and not motivated.
It's like, oh, just go surfing or,
Yeah.
just chill on the beach with
Yeah, I
everyone
remember
else
watching
after
Price is
work.
Right, 11 a.m. or whatever with Bob Barker. I'd try to take a early lunch, but yeah, I would be like an early worker. But yeah, I remember that. And then the Lost TV series came out, and that was cool.
So you obviously chose China over Silicon Valley. And what was that process like? That was in '07. right? So still like a couple decades worth of work to get to where you are now. And besides the entrepreneurs that you had met in smaller communities, did you eventually find a more steady support system that helped you in scaling your business and transforming it to what it is now?
Yeah, so the shorter story is the first time I went, I didn't like move to China right away. Maybe didn't even know I could live there, to be honest. But I went to those trade shows, and there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of, even back then, there was a lot of like international, expats there. And they had like speaker sessions. And, I'll say his name, Mike Bellamy's, I can't really say a mentor, but, guy I looked up to, very respectable, had a great business. Maybe you could say competitor because I was doing sourcing and he did sourcing. But they had this like one-on-one Q&A. You could wait in line to talk to some of the panelists. And I waited in line to talk to him. And I was like, hey, it's my first time here. I'm this younger, mid-20s person. He's like, more established. And I had questions written down on a notebook for him. And I was going down and I think he's like, I think he said it, but he's like, Mike, you could just live here. You could just stay here. You don't gotta like get all these. You don't gotta figure all this out on this trip. You can just stay here, live here. I'm like, you can live outside of. Yeah, it was. I remember it was like breaking my circuits. I was like, I thought I could just come here on a trip and have to go back. He's like, no, you can get a visa. You can stay here. I was like, that kind of blew my mind. I was like, wait. So then I started changing. That was towards the early part of my trip. So then how do I say? I guess the point is, I think expats, I'd like your opinion, are very open and supportive
Mm-hmm.
in general. I think
Mm-hmm.
of different countries I've been, but I liked Shenzhen's South China. It was very entrepreneurial. Even for Chinese people, it was a new city. It's still a rather new city, but back then it was just 20 years old. It was like, it used to just be a fisherman's town, and the government said this can be like a free trade zone. So all these entrepreneurs are going there from China, from overseas, everywhere. And I didn't have a long-term visa. I was on a 30-day stay. I had a 1-year visa, business visa with a 30-day stay, but all of us did. We were all these trading entrepreneur hustlers that had to leave and come back. And we were on the land border of Hong Kong, so it's technically a leaving of mainland China. So all of us are these hustlers, like coming in, entrepreneurs or hustlers. I don't know if it's a bad word to say hustler, but
Yeah.
these people just making stuff happen from all over the world, all over, not just America, everywhere. And so, yeah, I mean, it was so entrepreneurial. And I started doing events there. Earlier on in 08, 09, I started going to all these events, Chinese people organized in English and foreigners. And I did an e-commerce meetup in 2009. I became the facilitator of Startup Weekend. I started Startup
Mm-hmm.
Weekend in China. For 4 or 5 years, I opened up cities all over China for Startup Weekend. I went to Seattle to talk to the headquarters Startup Weekend. I started a co-working space, first or second co-working space in China, in Shenzhen. First was in Shanghai. I was super networking. I mean, I guess maybe I'm good at it anyway, but it felt like even easier because everybody's just so open. Everything was just
Mm-hmm.
new. And everything was, back then, it was like beautiful because like the startup scenes was just starting. Startup weekends, e-commerce meetups, co-working spaces. So I was yeah, deep into it. And this is like, yeah, 2009, 10, 11, 12.
So you really found your footing in the expat community and
I mean,
entrepreneur
Chinese food
community
too.
there.
And Startup
Yeah.
Weekend was very local Chinese. It was very Chinese. I did that like almost as like a volunteer. I just passionate about it. Uh, but yeah, most of like the e-com stuff was English and expats. And then, I mean, very early on, 07, 08, before I started doing events, I would just go to these bars, like expat bars. I learned from the previous generation. These people didn't
Mm-hmm.
know how to use computers. All they would do is use Yahoo Mail and Skype. And they did trades. Like they would do those old fashioned, like, import export businesses with like just a Yahoo and a Skype, attaching quotations. They had their big technology innovations was their own custom template in Excel that they would change the price that they got from the factory because they were like
It's
middlemen, and
very low tech. Yeah.
they're like, you need this. This is my spread. This is my template. I'll let you copy it. Okay. When you make your offers to your clients, you can use my template, but that was their system. And talking about mental health, one of my, I guess I could say mentor. A lot of people warn me about him. He was an alcoholic, but he was super smart. He's from San Francisco. I don't know how much to get off topic, but he was like the earlier generation of me, in my opinion. But he passed away of alcoholism. I don't know, or
Hmm.
cancer or something. It's a little bit of a detour of a story, but he got deported and he went to YMCA in San Francisco, and then
Oh, wow.
passed away of stomach cancer or something. But I learned a lot from that guy. He came to China from San Francisco with just a bicycle in like 10 years before me. So like early 2000s, late 90s, something like that. So he taught me so much about sourcing and China business. He definitely was not politically correct. He was always drinking, but, smoking. But I learned a lot from him, Andrew Grilly.
Yeah, it sounds like you built the networking to your advantage and getting information and being able to like listen really to all the sources, whether they were a generation above or different cultures. You were the connector even then
Yeah.
across all these different groups. And that really sounds like served you as you were building your business.
Yeah.
At what point did you start to feel like you were flowing a bit more in the business? Like things were finally going in the direction you wanted it to go. There was a little bit more stability. Was there ever a point where you're like, okay, I think I got this now?
It's definitely a roller coaster and there's lots of ups and downs and there's even still, but I think early into '08, I felt like I was getting the hang of it. I, hired a team. I set up a company. I had about 6 employees full time in China. And we were getting pretty big orders, container orders for sourcing. And I was still, of course, as my other partners were, was like part time on my bar supplies business. And I basically was hiring people in the office to be dedicated for New York Bar Store, kind of like an outsourcing somewhat. And that was all going really well. But there was a quick hiccup in that one. It's kind of I don't know, a lesson. But I had a quality control problem with the full container of one of my biggest sourcing customers, and it was around the Olympics, 2008, August. The Olympics in China was 2008.
Beijing, yeah.
Yeah, and that was like a peak China time. And it was this business was booming everywhere, but I had a big problem with the quality control of shipment, and that was basically a kind of a collapse of that somewhat business a little bit. I mean, you know, I don't know how much to get into the details, but basically, of course, customer almost be friend like another bar supplies because I basically was networking with a bar supplies industry, and he has, I this is before, at least I didn't have email on my phone then. I don't know if email on phone, I think iPhone was just coming out, but I didn't either want it even on my phone. But I remember coming back from dinner, going back to the computer, refreshing my Outlook mail. It's a email says from him, right? We
Mm.
have, in all caps, we have a big effing, I think he actually used the F word
Oh,
problem.
well, that'll get your attention.
Yeah. Like back then, at least, I'm refreshing, the emails are downloading into Outlook, it's like emails downloading, you're checking your email. So of course, your main customer buys containers and you make some money off. And there was a quality problem. I mean, I don't know how much you want to get into it, but of course he was very upset and we tried to rectify it and we mostly solved it, but it was very stressful for those few days. I remember with Andrew, the alcoholic, I called him Boozer. His name, I gave him the name Boozer. So I'm with Boozer and I'm like, he wasn't involved. He wasn't a partner, but he was always kind of guiding me. And we're drinking beers on a 7-Eleven on a corner, like in Asia City, right?
Yeah,
Like
in
I sit
Asia,
on
yeah.
those plastic chairs and a wood table with the big Qingdao green bottle of beer
Yes.
on I
People
think it
still do
was,
that today.
yes, he's still doing that. And it was multiple though. And, I was in cargo shorts, like old flip flops, a tank top, and I remember like kind of getting loud to him. I'm like, what am I going to effing do? This is like a $40,000 order. He's my best customer. He's gonna sue me. I'm kind of talking loud. And it's a very busy intersection in a bus stops and trains. And a Chinese woman comes up to me in a nice suit, like in a business suit, vest, button down, skirt, shoes. And she's approaches us. She's like, hi, I overheard you. I represent a English education program, and here's my name card. I'm actually have an opening, and I'm looking for a teacher. It's not a normal job. What this job is actually, it's you go to their house, and they're very wealthy families, and you play video games with their children and speak English. And and she told me to rate, and I can't remember, it was a high amount monthly. And she's like, it's only 3 or 4 days a week, like a few hours, play video games, talk English. And then I don't know, I don't want to disrespect English teachers, but it's somewhat in the network there, we would, I respect those that do it, but it's kind of like a low for an entrepreneur. Boozer is sitting there with cause she's talking to me, and I think he's laughing, and I'm like, it crossed my mind to accept this, and I was like, no,
Yeah.
this is not gonna go down. Look, this is bottom. This is bottom. This is the
Well,
bottom.
the universe sent you that person.
Yeah, this is the bottom. This is the sign. This is the sign. I am going to come out of this. This is the bottom in the story, and I'm going to come up like this. This is the bottom. So I think, I try to be polite. I think I might have kept the card, or I thanked her, and then sent her, she went back on her way. But he was laughing. I'm like, no, I got to get out of this. I'm not going to just sit here and drink and complain. I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to get out of this. So, I solved it, and that was definitely one of the lower parts, but I really didn't like the sourcing. I mean, a lot of people in the industry of e-commerce, or at least in China business, would do sourcing. Just like now, a lot of people do social media marketing or SEO or different services, which I do respect as a start. I think services is a great way to get started. But I felt like, 50 cents in the movie or the rap video where I'm trying to make $1 out of 15 cents, and I'm just like fighting, bargaining, negotiating. You're a middleman, right? You're a middleman, and both sides trying to, feel like, take advantage or bargain with you or whatever. At least it's not for me. I mean, I don't enjoy that. Some people seem to enjoy that, but so I kind of got out of that. I did have a partner in that. I brought in a partner, and it was a little bit awkward, but I transitioned out of that sourcing business, and I still kept doing e-com on the side, but I had more passion for internet marketing. Yeah, I mean, there's so many stories. I love.
Yeah.
That's kind of
No, it's really fascinating to kind of hear the evolution of where you started to really building your business. And I know that we could probably go on so many tangents just on that.
But I would say that's kind of one of my lower points of business. There's been others.
So when you go through some of these lower points now, what is the support system or habits, or like if you have a professional mental health support that you go to, like what do you fall back on when you do hit one of these inevitable lows in entrepreneurship?
Well, of course, the longer you're in it, the more used to it you get. And, I think I like to kind of keep motivational quotes in my mind. There's a Dolly Parton one that says, like, I didn't memorize it, it kind of got me off guard. Sometimes it's just vaguely in my mind, like, you don't get the sunshine without the rain, I think is her quote. But my process is I try to not react right away, right? I try to assess the situation, take a breath. Often I don't reply to things the same day. Like if it's like a bigger decision or problem, I try to just take in the information, like an email or message or news or event. That first day, I don't want to react. Like, of course, especially like be angry to somebody, right? Or confrontational. So I like to sleep on things. I even tell people now in business or friends, like, I need to sleep on this. I think that's where the saying comes from. And then I write every day. Yeah, I've written a few books, and I kind of went through the Pat Flynn podcast series, Passive Income, back in the day, and he had a few of these writers that would say, like, write 1,000 words a day and write books. I don't even write books anymore. I still do 1,000 words. It's like a meditative process for me to get it out of my head. So I do it in my first thing in my morning. Well, not first thing. I do meditation, do exercise, drink water. But besides, the first work thing I do is write. And I write down all my, I write more than, I write a lot more that nobody ever sees. I write a lot that nobody sees. I just write stuff to get out of my head. there's just documents and documents of stuff that I've written that is, I mean, I guess maybe if I die or somebody cracks into my email, I'm not that embarrassed to write it, to somebody to read it, but it's not really intended to be public. And it's just like I just streamline my thought. I just flow whatever's in my brain into typed out. Actually, even better for me is paper. But I get this by putting it on paper or typing it out. It gets it out of my head. And the other thing is, I've even had sessions with people doing startups that have asked me for input, but I just make a Google Calendar for me to reply to somebody or for me to write something. I'm gonna deal with this tomorrow. I'm gonna think, and then it's all about trying to not make it like stressful. Just because it's happening now doesn't mean I have to like address it right now.
Yeah, and I think I remember reading that in Tim Ferriss's book, 4-Hour Workweek. If you can't take immediate action on something, then don't read that email on a Friday night and think about it all weekend. If you're not going to be able to take immediate action until Monday morning, you're just stressing yourself out in the process.
Exactly. So maybe I got it there. I mean, there's so much stuff now I've internalized, but that's how I've dealt with it. And then, of course, I'll consult friends. I've built up a good network. So I'll try to think of the right person to consult with, but I'll also give them maybe the background. Like I'll document it and I'll make like a case log. Even my team knows that I call it case log. So like something happens, bad or good or whatever, like something, I make it a document, right? Put all the information into this document, like usually it's Google Doc because it's easy, right? Like, and then share it to those people, comment or put their input, and then try to collect the information, try to assess the information. Like there's stressful stuff that happens all the time. And I have younger business people in my network and they get stressed out about things. And I say, it's not going to go away. It's not going to stop. So you just got to learn how to kind of deal with it. And then you learn that everything is negotiation. I've learned that about life. I think I learned that in China too. Some American guys got audited and he says he just mails a garbage bag of receipts to the IRS or whatever and let them sort through it. But like these scary letters you get from, governments or banks or clients or friends, it's all a negotiation. Life is all about a negotiation. They, of course, have their demands or requests. Just because they put in a nice PDF doesn't mean you got to do what they say, right?
Mm-hmm. Always questioning back, even nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, I guess my answer is I try to not react right away. I try to schedule it when I'm ready and I write it out. I try to collect all the information and I try to make a calm and cool decision about how to deal with it or delegate it. I mean, even delegate it, right? Tell somebody on your team or even your friend, this is a problem. Can you help deal with this for me? So I don't have to think about it.
Yeah, those are really good actionable tips as well, because I think a lot of people feel the pressure coming in from corporate to be able to respond right away. But when you're running your own business, you can take a day and be a little bit more thoughtful with your response. And that actually goes a long way. So you've built a number of businesses so far and you are continuing to build a number of businesses. But what is the overall umbrella, the mission that you live by and that you are working towards?
Sure. I've thought about this a lot and it's also on my personal blog, but I say kind of become a motto. It's like giving hardworking people opportunity. I like to give opportunity to people. And that's what I mean, at least for personal, I think each business that I have has a different mission or vision. And then on a business level, it's usually about e-commerce or cross-border, Asia or cross-border business is kind of my niche. Most of, as you said in the intro, cross-border e-commerce. Also, I know there's a lot of scams and it's got a bad name a little bit, but Web3, blockchain. I know there's unfortunately a lot of scammers, but I think there's a lot of good into that, but that's become part of mine too. So but I think it's all about the right people, and aligning the people around those
opportunities. And in speaking of your mission, you also have a personal life outside of work and family and things that you like to do just for you. So what's the balance that you've found between your mission-driven business and having more of those personal boundaries to keep you sane?
I know. I mean, I guess I don't think anybody's an expert on this, but I'm pretty scheduled, pretty organized. And even to my family, they know the boundaries of my work. So for so many years, I'm a morning worker and I try to wake up early. I moved it to, actually, I've gone later lately. I used to be earlier, but I'm 6 a.m. I wake up and then, I have the routine. It's the morning miracle, Hal Elrod.
Miracle Morning. Yeah, I love
Yeah,
that.
Miracle Morning,
Savers.
savers. Yeah, so silence, meditation, yeah, the AV, yeah, affirmation, visualization, exercise, reading, scribing. Yeah. So I do that first. And then, like I said, I do the writing. So that's usually about 7:30. And then I do Pomodoros, 30-minute work sets. And I have a little journal. And I like to write on paper, not on an Excel or spreadsheet or whatever. And I grind, I call it grind. I work 30-minute sets on specific things. I try to think about it the day before. And I try to be as high impact creative work in my morning before lunch as I possibly can to get the most important things done. And then I try to do any phone calls or meetings. And then, yeah, after lunch, we're doing this podcast after lunch. I don't know your schedule, but I do afternoons calls, meetings, and then I try to do family time. After school, the kids will be coming back after this. Try to be with them as much as I can, but it's kind of like a balance of family and maybe phone calls or management kind of things in my evenings. I can't say I never do work at night, but I'll do some calls or some things, but I try to be present with my kids at night. And yeah.
And what do you do just for you? What's your play? What is your version of what lights you up?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a workaholic still. I mean, my whole life, it's actually funny. I don't really, walking, baking, reading, but I'm a workaholic. Even on my weekends, I like studying new things. Like, it sounds weird, but my favorite thing is I'm learning about new things, and I love to create. Like, I'm surrounded by various things I've created. My office is surrounded by products and things I built, but I love to create.
And to psychoanalyze just for a little bit. So there are different play personalities per person, and this is just based off of actual play research by Dr. Stuart Brown. It's a book called Play, if you're interested in reading it. And there's 8 categories of play. And what you mentioned about loving to read and do more like exercise. So like reading is part of storytelling. Exercise is part of kinesthetic play personality. But what you said when you lit up a little bit more was the exploration. And exploration doesn't just mean exploring physically, like travel, for example, but exploring your mind, exploring your emotions, your spirituality, really all aspects of life. So you might not be playing in the typical way, but it sounds like you are still activating that play personality in different parts of your life. So I always find that interesting to see how entrepreneurs incorporate that in different ways.
Great. Yeah, made me think of like my late grandmother at Christmas Day one year at my house, my parents' house in Florida. Might have been that year I was moving to China. It's like after dinner, 7 p.m., and I'm building the UK website of New York Bar Store on Christmas night. And I'm sitting in my computer or laptop making a UK website.
You're like,
and
this is fun.
And she says, like, well, I guess you're giving people jobs. Is something she had summarized that, because I have to have other people help me to do those tasks after I make it.
So that links back into your mission, which is very cool to hear. So thank you so much for being on and sharing your early stage and your current endeavors as well with us today. I want to ask one final question, and this could be, if all of the work that you have done thus far disappears overnight, it is gone and there's no website sharing any of your work, none of your books are around anymore, what is one core piece of truth or advice that you would want to live on after all of your work is gone?
Yeah, I just feel like your word is your all you are is your word. Like I know there might be some people that maybe they see the show or maybe they're not happy with some of the decisions I've made with the dealings with them. So I don't want to say 100%, but I really try my best to make a fair, what I believe a fair deal for everybody I encounter, even if it's not favorable to me, at least at that short term intersection. And I do that because I believe that's the most valuable thing is, I guess, trust or your word. And I try to teach my kids that. So I don't know if that qualifies. Would I still
It
have that?
does.
Okay.
Yeah. It's part of the 4 agreements, being true to your word.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you again. And I look forward to interviewing you on stage soon.
Yeah. I can't wait. This is great. Great job.
Thank you.